You've heard the term Sabaki. You've seen a few Sabaki. You've read about Sabaki, and maybe you even had this happen to you a few times. Especially if you played against me. Now you're probably watching this video to learn even more about it. Well, welcome to phase 2 of the Unknown Sabaki training, where we will review what is and what isn't the Sabaki, learn when and when not to use a Sabaki, argue why you should, and finally, learn how to create situations where you can set it up. I am the Unknown Feng. And welcome to my channel. Okay guys, drop your bags, pick up a pen and pad, and let's have a quick review. This is an attack reversal. This is a parry. They are not the same thing because an attack reversal is an animation with a prearranged attack that can be chickened. This is a Sabaki, and this is a parry. They are not the same thing because, once again, a Sabaki is an attack with a hidden punch or kick parry that activates during a certain window period. In all actuality, a Sabaki is a crush. A crush in Tekken is one move that has priority over another. For example, Feng's Snake Edge crushes Horong's high, making it a high crush. His down forward 1 is a move that has priority over low attacks, making it a low crush. Think about it. 2 attacks are coming out and on different levels, and we would call that a high, low, or mid crush. A Sabaki and a punch enter at the same time, and Sabaki crushes the punch. I honestly don't know how long the Sabaki system has been in Tekken, but the internet told me that it goes as far back as Tekken Tag Uno, with Kazuya's forward 2 or soul thrust being one of the very first Sabakis. In a later video, I promise to go more into depth about the concept of Yomi in fighting games. It's one of my favorite concepts that can range from pattern recognition at its lowest form to hypnotic genjutsu at its highest. I will say that this is one of the easiest ways to increase the success rate of landing a Sabaki, parry, or attack reversal. Here we'll start with one of the lowest forms of reading your opponent, seeing how they use their character. We know that strings are a predetermined attack sequence that are more about the character than the player. So let's talk more about them. Whenever I do Feng's Peacock Sweep, most players duck the third attack because they're really familiar with that final low attack. The same can be said for Law's Junkyard Mix-Up. That's the way you really become familiar with a string is by a combination of 4 factors. Frequency of exposure, the damage, the speed, and notoriety. This is probably why the second hit to this string gets blocked 90% of the time, while Ganguru's Yaguru Daiko hits people more often than it should. Think about the most common strings that you're always hit by, and most of the time you're left with the option of blocking them and punishing them. What if I told you that there are times when you miss over 90 plus damage opportunity and you settle for a measly 30? And the only setback is that a lot of these strings have alternative endings that prevent you from carelessly throwing out a 1+2 in anticipation of a punch. And this is where reading your opponent comes in handy. Which strings do they tend to use at what time or situation, and which ones only end with a punch? Hard reads are the next step above interruptions. With strings you have a fairly logical route or outcome. With hard reads you are moving more into the realm of intuition, taking you deeper into Yomi. I will say that while using strings is fairly safe, using hard reads can be closer towards that high risk, high reward factor. Guess wrong, and that $5,000 grand prize goes to someone else. Guess correctly, and you live in the glory as the new Sorcerer Supreme. I can't teach hard reads, but I can tell you that the more you download and poke your opponent, the more unconscious data that you can gather before you can make your educated guess. Carefully watch your opponent again and what types of situations you are most likely to see the same or similar attack. If it's a punch, then you're already there. Finally, there is the third part of the Yomi, which I consider the deepest level, shaping the future. In the first part, we're able to make a fairly educated guess on the attacker and mitigate any risk. In the second portion, you went off into the deep end and felt your opponent's attack from an educated guess. Here we combine the two for a harder but more rewarding read. You've downloaded your opponent and you've conditioned them. And after a strong read and conditioning, you know how they will react to your attacks, counterattacks, and setups. With this knowledge, it's time to use those puppet strings to your advantage. Let's see exactly how this works using the wrath of math. 1 plus 2. The startup frame for Iron Shield is in 21 frames. This means that it takes 21 frames for the attack to come out. His Sabaki window is between the frames of 2 and 9 during this move. This means that any punch other than a rage art will react differently than a block or counter hit. And logically, this means that he has a 7-frame sweet spot that breaks all the rules of block punishment, and they break them like Pablo. The golden rules of block punishment are: if an attack is 10 frames, logic dictates a 10-frame punishment. We can't go higher or lower because 10 is where most jabs in Tekken start. If an attack is 15 frames on block, logic dictates a 15-frame launcher or faster attack. The golden rule of Tekken that stops smashing is: you do not press a button if you are minus on block. This is playing Tekken, taking turns, and whatever the kids call it these days. Call it the wrath of math, because it's an efficient yet practical way of breaking down the game. You have this knowledge, which is enough to easily get you into the orange or blue ranks. Imagine one day you're playing me. You see me fly through the air with a weird, useless move that leaves me at -7. The right side of your brain tells you that it's punishment time, so you go for a 10-frame jab. But this video is about Feng's Sabaki. You punish me, and this happens. That's right. You just lost 90 points in damage, and you have no idea that I planned this from the start. There's no way whatever happened because I was -7, and you were responding with a quick 10-frame jab. Is this a gimmick? Sure, in the eyes of some, but of course, I completely disagree. What if it's not a gimmick but actually manipulation, genjutsu, or Yomi? The entire purpose of this move was that I knew you were going to use your fastest move to punish me, which you did, and which also happened to be a 10-frame punch. Remember that a Sabaki has a certain active frame, and during this time, I knew this parry would most likely work. Do you want to know why? Let's remember that Feng's parry starts from the 2nd frame until the 9th frame. I do my -7 move, and you decide to punish with a 10-frame startup. Your 10 frames minus my 7 puts us at 3, which is in a perfect range for a successful Sabaki. This means that your 10-frame jab will be hit by a Sabaki and not the attack. I created the situation, you responded, and now you are reevaluating the rules. So personally, I don't think it's cheap. Is it easy to accomplish? Yes and no. Here are some of Feng's main moves that are within that 10-frame punch punish. But not everyone punishes with a 10-frame jab. If your opponent uses an attack that puts him out of that range, Feng will be hit. And that's why it's best to stay within that 3 to 5 range, or -7, 6, 5 on block range. Feng does have other options, so please remember that you can apply these as well. To recap, you can use your Sabaki when you have memorized their string attack patterns and can interrupt. You can also use it when you have a hard read on a slow or spammed attack. And finally, you can create your own setup against an aggressive puncher that violates the block punishment rules in Tekken. The full list of Feng setups is dropping pretty soon in the next video, so please be on the lookout. But my advice is don't rely on Sabaki, or rather don't over-rely on Sabaki. He's really good as a poke character, so poke the bear until they lose control, and then make them pay. Thank you so much for watching this video, and the other ones as well. God bless. Feng Wei. Out.
So you've learned the top Shaolin style?
I have had the I Ching manual for 12 years. If I had not mastered it by now, I'd regard myself as an idiot.